Guys, Valentine's Day is rapidly approaching. As men, we often are at a loss of what to do, and we end up doing something generic like buying flowers or sending chocolate. But guys, we have something for you today that it doesn't have to be Valentine's Day. It can be any day of the year. We are going to help you to do something that maybe you've never done. Today, one of my friends and college professor is going to teach you the art of writing a love letter. Men in the Arena Army, we salute you. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Men in the Arena podcast. I'm Jim Ramos, guiding you to your best version of the stress bubble of life and beyond. I'm really excited to bring my good friend on the show today, Kevin Brewer. Kevin lives in Yamhill, Oregon with his beautiful wife, Amy, of 27 years. He's currently a college professor at George Fox University, and he is an expert at writing love letters to his wife. So we are so excited to have him on the show. He's also the father of three amazing young adult sons, and he's a great father, great husband, and a great friend. So Kevin, it's great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me on. I've listened to it for many years, so it's humbling to be on. So
yeah, I remember you came up to me at church one time years ago and you said, "I'm mad at you. I keep spending money on all these books you're recommending."
It's true.
Well,
I still am.
Well, this is one of those podcasts where the guys don't have to worry about buying a book. They're actually going to write their own.
That's great. Just paper and pencil.
I want to dive into this podcast today, and before we do, I want to issue a warning. I woke up this morning and I thought I need to say this because we have a lot of wives that listen to this podcast. And they listen because they want to figure out what's going on inside their husband's brain, and they also want to find out how they can be better wives. So here's one thing I'm going to tell you, ladies, to help you be a better wife today. Are you ready for this? If you are listening to this today, and your husband is listening to this, and your husband gets inspired today, and he writes you a love letter, but you know he would have never written you a love letter if he hadn't listened to the podcast. The last thing you ever want to do is mention the podcast, because if you say something like, "Oh, you just heard that on the podcast," you are it's like kicking him between the legs. It would be incredibly disrespectful, and it would be hurtful to him. So you don't want to do that to him. What you want to do instead is applaud his beautiful letter, put it on display, frame it, tell him what a stud he is and what a great lover and romantic man he is. That's what you want to tell him. Don't ever tell him you listen to this podcast. So I just know how this can go sometimes. So don't take something that your husband does that's beautiful and put it in an ugly package because you happen to. The key thing here is he heard, he learned, he was inspired, and he did something. And man, you're going to applaud it because you're a magnum wife. So I wanted to offer that warning, Kevin. So Kevin, let's talk about this. So tell me about this. So I know you've got a funny story here. What inspired you to teach people about writing love letters?
Well, there is a guy who used to be a friend until this incident happened at church.
Hey, I have the same relationship with him.
I used to think he was a nice guy. He's part of our men's group or a men's ministry at our church. And he was trying to come up with some workshops for our men's weekend. And he's like, "Yeah, hey, would you be open to doing a workshop?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I think I would." And he says, "Well, and looking at you, college professor and everything like that, you seem like the kind of guy that's written a love note or two to your wife."
Did you tell him you were math? It was math, not English?
Well, I did. I said, "Yeah, I'm used to just more numbers than letters. We call those variables."
Yeah.
I said, "But I have written some of those." And he goes, "Well, great. Then how about you teach us a workshop? I'll put you down." So that started this whole ball rolling there, and I have written notes before, but never really thought about like what how would you kind of explain that, and then especially hey, out in a country church and got a lot of blue collar friends. That's different to kind of talk about that than C.S. Lewis's nephew or something.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and you brought up a good point. You said blue-collar friends, because we attend the same church. The building was built in 1882, and it's a wonderful church, but it is filled with country folk, blue-collar guys. And our blue-collar guys are very, very intelligent
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're blue collar or white collar is not a matter of intelligence, but our blue collar guys are brilliant with their hands and work, and a lot of those guys don't. They're not big writers or readers. They'll read if they have to learn something for their
Yeah.
job, but they're not big writers or readers. And so a lot of our guys could be intimidated by writing a love letter. And I think the reason why a lot of women don't get more love letters or love notes is
Mm-hmm.
because the husbands don't know how to do it. And if a
Yeah.
man doesn't know how to do something, he'd rather not do it than fail. So,
Yeah.
I think that's right on the money. So we're gonna. So I know that you've told me earlier you want to target that guy. You're not going to target the college professor. You're going to target the guy who's
Yeah.
intelligent but
Yeah.
doesn't maybe feels a little intimidated.
Well, and even with that too, because we're so into the digital world now that we're used to like doing emails or text messages or talking on the phone for that matter. And so one of the things that I just think is extremely important. My wife is an elementary teacher by trade, and she's all into cursive and different things. But there's something about just writing it by a pen, right? Like just it takes that extra time. The point of writing the love letter. I mean, I think you really have to think about the point of writing the love letter. And sometimes we get caught up with like the letter, but the importance is the love. Right? We're really trying to communicate love. And nothing says love more than making a sacrifice. So the fact that if any guy that just never does anything, if this is not your thing, then that's to your advantage, right?
Yes,
Because just putting anything on paper is a win,
I
right?
agree.
She's just going to love that you like, that's a snow lot. That's just so not like him. So what's going on here? So, and it's because I love you that I'm writing this. And so I think just right there, just from the get-go, focus on love. Don't focus on the letter. Don't focus on the grammar. Don't worry about that stuff. Like she knows, she probably has a good idea of what your writing abilities are. So if anything, it works to your advantage. So,
Okay, so step number one, use a pen and paper. And I'm going to add one, use blue ink. Use a pen with blue ink. There's something about blue ink. But
mm-hmm,
that's a great point, Kevin. I hadn't thought about that. But don't send a long text. Don't
mm-hmm,
put it on the computer.
yeah,
Put it on paper.
yeah.
That's really, really good. Okay. So put it
Yeah,
on
it just,
paper.
it personalizes it, and especially if you can do cursive. I mean, there's just something about the cursive itself. Right? The young people, they don't know how to do that, but some of the middle-aged and older guys, they
Yeah,
can. So,
cursive is beautiful. I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
typically do like a mix between the two, and mine's not
Mm-hmm,
beautiful, but my wife writes beautifully. So start with a pencil and pen. So
mm-hmm,
so what would you say the next step is? So let's stop. And I'm going to ask you this question. So we're telling guys to write a love letter, but
mm-hmm,
but there's also these shorter things that would go on a postcard or a
mm-hmm.
post-it.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a love note and a love letter in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that. I think the love note was probably that was usually that's where I made my money, so to speak, with my wife early on. So this is even before post-it notes, right? It was just the love note, like just the index card, a little scrap of paper, the back of an envelope. You just put anything down there. You just leave it around the house, put it on. Well, when I was dating, I put it on her car window. Just triggering something like stuff in the lunchbox, that kind of thing. So those are some great things to do as well. They don't have to be as deep, right? Like, but it could just be more. I'm thinking of you. But the love letter, I don't know exactly the length, but it's going to be longer. You're going to be putting a lot more thoughts and ideas down on there. So it's not just one thought. It's kind of a collection of thoughts. And you can really kind of go with anything, but you can, I just think because of that, it's, the note can just come spur of the moment, but the love letter, you need to plan a little bit of time. So I think you just need to plan. I would suggest just getting away or during your lunch break or something like that. You need like half an hour or something, or I don't know, 15 minutes or multiple 5-minute times. And you just need to think and just put down thoughts about your wife, right? I mean, what are things about your wife that jump out at you? I mean, you can be kind of categories like, how you're attracted to her physically, and that's the easy one. But you want to get past that because that, in a sense, is a little shallow. You definitely want to be telling her how beautiful she is, but to really be diving into the love is, what is it about her that you just really appreciate? What are the things she does, or what's the ideas she has, or what are the roles that she plays, or how does she? I want to say how she makes you feel, but I just know for me, just the idea. I think behind every good man, right, is the woman that believes in me. So to think about that kind of stuff, and I would just encourage you just to have a piece of paper and just jot things down, like just any idea about your wife, like why she's so amazing, like um, so try to come up with some things, because then when you go to write the letter, then you're going to have this collection of ideas that you can go with. So
Okay. So I'm just for the sake of men getting an assignment.
yeah,
I'm going to tell them to plan on one half page.
yeah,
One half. That's about
yeah,
250 words.
yeah,
Easy.
mm-hmm, yeah,
So write it in pen on paper, one
mm-hmm,
page long. Block out time. You said block out time to write
mm-hmm,
it. And then
yeah.
you said, and I'm going to ask you to dial this in a little more. You said write down why you love your wife. Are you just saying right at this point in the game they're just writing a bunch of random things down, or are they categorizing them, or how are they doing this?
Well, I so I kind of had broken this down because I kind of went through this with I was trying to think, hey, let me kind of go through the process and document some of the ideas. And then when I was teaching the workshop, so what I had come up with was, first of all, start off with, you kind of want to get the brain going. So start off with the physical, write down like two or three things that you like about it, right? Like, I mean, it could be kind of the shell. I like it with your backside, right? Like your eyes. I like your hair. I like, but what would be better is a phrase of like, I love watching your hair blow in the wind or something. You know what I'm saying? So, so yeah, there you go. So, feel free to go with that. But then to move in, because that's going to be the easier stuff to get to. But, um, you know, again, just think about what are one or two things that your wife does, around the house, things that you're proud of. Well, honestly, because we do brag about our wives, and we don't often brag to her, right? Like, so what are the things that we're kind of proud of, right? Like how she works the job, or how she does the job while she's working, right? So my wife is, in elementary school, kind of does writing books and things like that. I love watching her work with the kids. So just something like that. Like when I see you working with the neighbor kids, right? Like that you're just at your element, right? Like then put that down, right? If your wife is just amazing in the kitchen and hosting people, like then just something like that. Like that's just that it shows that you see her and you notice what she does, and you just think that that's important and you're proud of it, and you brag every now and then to your friends about it. Well, why not tell your wife that, right? Um, so, and then you could get into some things like thinking about how God has used her in your life. Um, there could be how she's, held you accountable, or she's reading. It could kind of go back to like you see her reading the Bible, and then that encourages you, or that sometimes she speaks some of those tough words from Scripture that you kind of wanted to gloss over. You don't understand when you read the Scripture, and she brings it to light for you. Sometimes that happens, right? Like we're just a knucklehead reading the Bible, and then she sees it and she gives her perspective, and you're like, never thought of it that way, right? Like, I mean, God gave us our wives for a reason.
Yep.
And so I'm just kind of going through the different areas of our life, and that's a big one as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. For me, because I've written, I'm a poem guy. I
Mm,
write poems, and I've written love letters, and I've done different things over the years. For me, also, it's just to add one. I like to think of what are the qualities about her character traits. Like
hmm.
I'll tell her, you're faithful, you're loyal,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
holy. These character traits, which is which are inspiring because I don't.
Yeah.
They inspire me to be faithful and loyal and holy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
good.
there's some things we have in common with them. And then there's a handful of things that are just, I'm not wired that way at all. And that just, I, I think the healthy marriage over the years, I've discovered, after about the 10-year mark, I'm like, boy, all these things that I started kind of noticing in her, I'm taking on a certain degree of myself, right? I was seeing how she was seeing the world, and I kind of started seeing the world a little differently that way, right? Like, and I think that's how God intends it, as we're kind of being united. So, yeah, so it's literally becoming it's rewiring me. So why wouldn't I want to just be thankful for that and notice that and just let her know that? So that's such a key thing.
So you're categorizing at this point the things you love about your wife, physically, which is the easy part, right? The things you're proud of, the things that you like about her personality, her character, and the ways that she's challenged you to be better. Okay, so I've got this list of 30 things. Now what do I do?
Well, I think you should probably take a break.
Oh, good. All right, good.
Yeah, I don't think you do it the same. You don't do it at the same time. One is just coming up with a list of things. In fact, that could just be an ongoing thing. You could, if you're not desperate to get it done by like someday next week. Oh, so if there's no deadline, then it could just be a collection of things until you kind of feel like you've really kind of processed it. Because then you're going to be driving around or at work, and then you're going to think of something. So just add that to the list. But then when you go to write it, then you kind of want to be fresh and kind of go through that, and you kind of want to put them together in some way. Now, my disclaimer for this as well is that you were telling the wives to be a little careful if they happen to listen here, not to judge. And I really am hoping that, because I just kind of feel like that just getting anything from the husband on paper, it's handwritten, goes a long ways. So
especially the first one.
Yes, you can get better at. It's a skill. I mean, it's a skill that anyone can get good at. And you're just getting good at it with your wife, right? Like you're just trying to impress your wife. And so I think that's, I mean, she's the one that looks at us and just kind of smirks, right? Like, so she's like, oh, he wrote something. Well, this is going to be good. So, and it will be good, right? And so then you just get to kind of jump in and just start putting things down on paper. And you're not writing to your English teacher from middle school. So she's not going to mark it up with red ink and, hey, bad punctuation and capitalization. And so you just get to share kind of what that is. So,
yeah. So how do I create, I've written this list down. I've walked away, which I think is a great stroke of wisdom. Walk away. So really what we're telling guys is actually we're telling them to block 2 different times to do this. So we're going to walk away, maybe a day, maybe 2 days. We're going to process. We're going to think. I've got my yellow notepad on my phone. I'll write things in there just to remember. And then eventually I'm going to come back.
Yeah.
And I've got half an hour, let's say. Now what? Well, how do I create flow?
And before you got to have a nice piece of paper. So we kind of talked about pen and paper. So, maybe it's worth investing in some nice stationery. Maybe you're a men's group. You could all go in on the same stationery. I think they sell them in 10 packs or something. Like everyone gets one. Then that'd be kind of weird. Everyone has the same stationery, their wives. But hey, I don't know. You invest in something, a plain piece of paper, notebook paper, but it should be a kind of a decent piece of paper. And then you just start with the name, call her your pet name, or there's really no right or wrong. I mean, it's your love. It's how you talk about it. So, I think I did one just recently and I said, dearest Amy. So I don't know, it just kind of seems, I kind of almost did a little bit more sarcastically, because it's like, that seems like you're supposed to do it that way. So I'll do it. And then she's going to smirk like, what? So I don't know. You should have fun with it. It's love, but it's fun. So,
well, but your wife is such an artist. She would take that and laugh. She'd be like, that's cute. Because you never talk to her that way and she would never want you to. But the fact that you're doing that, you can see the smirk on your face. So she's reading it, right? Because she knows you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's really good.
You're kind of playing with it. You're kind of thinking, how is she going to respond? Yeah. And then I'm going to write something to get a response. And so, to get her to smirk. So I don't want to do it nicely because then that's too, right? I don't know. You're
playing, you're bantering, you're doing your thing.
Yes. Yeah. And so writing is, as you do a little bit more writing, I think the skill would come out, and as she responds to you, you're going to see what she says. So, and I'm sure hopefully guys have written some stuff in cards and you kind of have a little bit of an idea, like maybe some of the jokes that you're trying to pull off. So be careful about some of those. You want to avoid the ones that are going to get the eye roll. That's not a positive one, right? I mean, so.
Well, what I'm hearing you say, Kevin, is avoid sarcasm, because in sarcasm, there's truth. So don't say anything sarcastic that is mean because you have some underlying bitter
Yeah.
root there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Dearest Amy has no sarcasm. It's just, I just knowing you two, I'm like, okay, that is cute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. It's not what I'd say, but it's not too far overboard. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And she definitely is going to see, for most, I think most women, when they get a love letter, especially if they haven't gotten one, they are going to be surprised. So it's not like it has to be overly serious on that level. So, but you just get to start putting things down there. And, I guess probably another thing along the way is I'm just a really big fan of to include scripture. So that could be a good thing as you're kind of, processing and coming up with a list is to have a scripture, right? Like something from your Bible reading. It could have to do with what you think of her. Like you could look in Proverbs 31 if you wanted to directly be about your wife. It could just be something about love in general. It could be, I don't know how some people are, but we have like it started as our wedding verse, but it has since turned into our family verse and our focus. So, or if there's someone that has a verse over their mantle or something like that, if there's a verse that means something that kind of the family all gathers around, then that could be something that you could throw in there. That's just like somewhere in the letter. I guess let me start over. Somewhere in the letter is to include God, right? So it's not just a love letter to your wife, but how you are thankful to God for your wife and the adventure that you're going on and what you're hoping to be doing with her. And, just kind of sharing a verse of just encouragement to her or something. But I just always think it's a good thing to always include scripture in all your communication. So
here's an example. A good example is Philippians 1:3. I thank God every time I remember you. A bad example is Proverbs 5:19. Your breasts satisfy me always. Stay away from that stuff. Stay away from Song of Solomon unless it's non-sexual. But you're trying to focus on loving her for who she is.
Yeah.
Right? For who she is inside. So I love that. Include scripture, bring God into this for sure. Okay, so I've got a scripture, I've got all of these things I've listed about her. Now the hard part for the guys is creating flow. So how do you take all of these thoughts and create flow? By flow I mean a letter. A 250, 200 word letter. How do we do that? That to me is the question.
Yeah, I mean, you just be, chronological, like here's what I'm thankful for. Here's what you've done. Here's what I noticed day to day. And then here's kind of where we're going in the future. Maybe kind of putting some of those things on there, right? Which I think in the future could be a good thing too. I think, especially, I wrote one recently, or last year by the way, I don't write love letters all the time. So
I understand.
But the one, it was for our 25th wedding anniversary. So I was kind of trying to touch on, wow, look at where so I just really put a lot of things down there, but then I was trying to use that as a moment to kind of think where we're going and what are the things we get to do. And picturing sitting on a beach, this was really a weird one, but it was sitting on a beach and watching our grandkids. Now, we don't have any grandkids right now. We don't have any daughters-in-law. But I just thought, you know what? That is something that I'm looking forward to. So I just thought that actually seemed like that would be a great memory. And we haven't really talked about it before. So all of a sudden that drew something out that now is a conversation piece for us. So I just throw that down there. So chronologically can be good. Past, present, future. You could do that. Or you could just literally, if you have them categorized somehow on a piece of paper, that probably would work out too. I wouldn't start with your physical one. I would probably start with, here's what I was thinking of you the other day. And I just started keeping track of some of the things that I like about you. And then I ran out of paper, come up with a joke or something. I don't know.
Well, you've said something over and over again, and I want to affirm the men with what you're saying. Guys, the fact that you give her a love letter, you've already won. Mm-hmm. So what Kevin is saying and what I'm hearing, if I'm wrong, Kevin, tell me. What I'm hearing you say is, you write that love letter, you've already won.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. And then I also heard you say this, and I think, when I'm talking about flow, you said the word organized, and I think those are the same things. But
Yeah.
you said something I thought was really good especially for a first love letter,
Mm-hmm.
is the past, the chronology, past, how we met,
Mm-hmm.
present, where we are
Yeah.
now, and future, what you see together. And I
Yeah.
think what you said there, Kevin, is a stroke of genius because there's something about women that a lot of men don't know. And I don't care if it's a woman running a Fortune 500 company as a CEO. Women are incredibly insecure when it comes to relationship with her husband. So when you
Mm.
start talking future, that
Yeah.
does something within the spirit of a woman.
Yeah.
So I really think that's a stroke of genius there on your part.
Well, I don't know about genius, but it's survival. How about that? I'm
Live
trying
to
to
fight
plant
another
seeds.
day.
Yeah, I'm trying to plant seeds in her head. Hey, when
I
we get you that new car, and then you're going to be with me going shopping, right? Like, or we're going to go to our anniversary. Like, don't forget,
Oh
I'm
my
in the
gosh,
picture.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love the painting the picture of the future.
yeah,
That's something that's new learning for me. So I
mm,
appreciate that. So I
yeah,
think that is really good. I think that might be a great recipe for a first love letter: past,
hmm,
present, future.
yeah. Well, the other thing too is it's because a lot of us guys we're not good at talking and sharing our things, but and then we mess up. Well, you can't mess up about the future because it's just what you hope to happen. So now you might mess up once you get there, but as long as it's still in the future, you can't go wrong. So come up with something that's nice, right?
So you,
So
you said
yeah.
sharing our feelings. So what do you recommend when it comes to sharing our feelings? What feelings should a man share, or should a man share feelings in a love letter?
Feelings. Um, I'm not a fan of the word love too much, right? Like we overuse the word love,
I
and as
agree.
guys,
I agree.
yeah, but we got to come up with something. It's always like, so maybe the feeling is I feel more bold when you're by my side, right? Um, I have better thoughts when you're. It could be the thing that triggers in you. Like I perform better, right? Like, um, if your wife happens to make you lunch, my wife does from time to time, and then it spoils me because then when I make my own lunch, then I'm gonna go back to just the peanut butter sandwich. But um, but yeah, it's like wow, when I have my lunch, then I'm reminded of you, and that's a nice right. Like it could be just what it triggers in you, right? Just a thought. It could trigger a thought. It could trigger boldness. It could trigger action. Um, so, and then you could get into the squirmy words if you want to. I don't really like to live there. I'm a math teacher, so, but I don't get into, I don't get into that a whole lot. So I usually do a little bit more of the other, like
You
you
make
make me,
me feel like a whole number
yes. So
and not a fraction. Well, you said something though that was really interesting. This might be the title of this podcast. You said, we're writing a love letter, how to write a love letter without using the word love. Like
yeah,
describe what I hear you saying is describe your love to her
yeah,
without using the word love. I
yeah,
adore you. You bring out the best in me. Your
hmm,
faithfulness is
yeah,
inspiring. Your
yeah,
beauty is better
yeah,
today than yesterday, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's really good to write a love letter without using the word love in the letter. So the goal is to write a love letter describing the love without using the word. Because that's almost like a bouquet of flowers. It's just so
it,
generic. The word love.
yes, exactly. Yeah. It's the dozen roses. So you don't just come out and just give a dozen roses all the time. It's like, then it is meaningless, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you got to save it for the special occasions. Yeah.
Gosh, that's
So,
so good.
well,
That's so good.
I think a lot of guys are actually better at this than they realize because if we were to change it and say the word excitement. So to use the word excitement with your buddies, man, I went out and boy, I was excited when we went hunting and I saw the deer. I was excited. You don't keep using excitement. You're just telling what happened. Like, oh, I was getting nervous when I saw that, and then man, my heart started beating. Like, why didn't it just kind of just say those kind of things, right? Like you don't have to like feel like you have to drive it towards these feelings or things. You just kind of talk about And I think that's why it is good to just reflect, because then you can just think about why having her around makes you better. What does it do to you? Right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yes, that's good. So we're going through this letter.
Hmm.
We are explaining our love without using the word. Maybe we're using a chronological order to the relationship.
Hmm.
So and it's really easy to get into a flow as these thoughts are organized in these ways. So
Yeah.
let's get to the end of the letter.
Mm.
How do you, what's a beautiful ending?
Love, Kevin.
So you do use the word at the end.
I
So
guess
it's
use
okay
love
to
at the
use the
end.
word
We'll
or,
use love at the end. Yeah.
or
Uh,
your loving husband, some
your love. You got.
derivative.
I'll admit. That it's kind of a hard one. I don't. Because I don't know. It is like you gotta think. Are you? I'll be honest. This is kind of the most challenging for me. Was like, do I just put Kevin? Do I put you know a pet name or something like that? My pet. What she calls me, which we don't even really have one. Like hubby, hubster. I don't know. Like so, it's just kind of weird. Do I just do my initial or what? So, but I don't. I don't know that it matters. By that time, hopefully, she's in tears or laughing or something, and it's just like, yeah, that's from me. Or um,
It's funny. I'm in my file right now, and I actually have a file called love letters. So I'm gonna open one.
oh, there we
I'm
go.
opening an
Let,
actual love letter. This is a
let's
poem.
see how you
I
ended.
write a lot. I
Jimbo.
write a lot of poems. So yeah, I tend to lean towards poems more,
Yeah.
because to me they create more. I don't know, but I've written tons of love letter. Here's another one. I signed it, your loving husband. And
Hmm.
at the end of the
Yeah.
page, I said Philippians 1:3. I thank God every time I remember you.
Yeah.
So these are
Yeah.
just some things, and they're just a lot of them are random thoughts. I'm a writer though.
Yeah.
So don't do
Yeah.
what I don't listen to me because I'll overwhelm you. But no, this
Well,
is
you're
good.
past writer. You're doing poems too. So, but I
Yeah.
think poetry could be a great thing. I'm not a poetry writer, but and the people who are really good at poetry, they say this isn't true. But for me, poetry it rhymes. So just coming up with a witty little thing. If you can come up with a serious thing, great. But you can come up with some silly little things that rhyme. Uh, yeah, we had one. Love you little, love you big, love you like a little pig. I raised pigs when I was growing up, so that was just
Oh.
one that came down there, and it was just kind of a silly, fun thing. I don't know why not. A roses are red, violets are blue one. You can
Yeah, well,
whatever, go for
for
it.
me, I think the rhyme is really important. Almost all mine have rhymed, and I usually do an A B type of thing. So I
Hmm.
A and
Yeah,
I B and I rhyme it, and
yeah,
I basically take a theme and I just write about
mm,
it. One poem was
yeah,
called She, and it was
yeah,
about her, and one was called The Faithful One, is about her faithfulness.
yeah,
So I took a
yeah.
topic and I just wrote about it, and I think
No,
you could do that too when you're talking about your topics.
yeah,
You could say, "Man, I really admire this in my wife." And you could
hmm,
just spend one letter writing about what you admire about her heart.
yeah,
I mean, so what I hear you saying is, which is really cool, and I'm glad you didn't give us a lock and load recipe, is that there's multiple things you can do here,
hmm.
but the most important thing is do something.
Something, something is better than nothing. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, right? So,
Yeah, but I mean, I've learned. I mean, I'd never thought about this. Write it on paper, like, and I think I've done that before, but those
yeah,
wouldn't be on my computer, right? They
yeah,
would be somewhere else for her. They'd be in her
yeah,
Bible, and on her
yeah,
Bible,
yeah.
option here is buy your wife a Bible and take that open leaf there and write your love letter in the cover of that Bible.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Take it
there,
with her.
yep.
Yeah.
So there's certain
Well, and
things.
that's a key thing too, is the idea. I'm always thinking that this is it's a document, right? Like it could go to court, right? And so she is hopefully going to be carrying that. She might be carrying this with her if it's right, and stash it and be rereading it later. So is this the kind of thing that you want as she's rereading it that could be a real encouragement to her? So as you're thinking about some of these things, I think that can be an important component too. It's like, I don't know if it raises the bar or something like that, but I just think that's kind of cool. It's like, what are the words that you just want her to hear that she's continuing to reflect on? Like, you just think she's beautiful. Put that down and why you think she's beautiful. Like, man, when things are tough, I just really feel for you. I love to be there for you with the kids, and just appreciate all your sacrifice. nice. Like you just want that because she can just read that maybe when you're away or something. So that's what can be here. And you could have a typed one, and she can do the same thing, and then maybe just write a little note on top of that with that.
So you got me
A lot
thinking.
of flexibility.
You got me thinking. So let's take sex and get it out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
What can you guarantee will happen with this letter? And I'll start because I'll start and I'll let you go. But for me, I can guarantee you she will never throw it away. That's a guarantee, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some other
Yeah.
guarantees that you have? Like, what are some things you've learned about Amy? Like when you write her a letter, what are some things that you can tell the guys? I promise you this will happen.
Well, not just not throwing it away, but kind of putting some of them in a prominent spot, right?
Yes, yet
Even
together.
though even though she can't see it, but it's still just a reminder, right? Um, I think that it's the response afterwards too. I think it changes the conversation because you put things down on paper that are hopefully meaningful. And like if you're casting a vision, I think that there's just a softness that kind of can come in. It's a bonding thing, right? Just like when you pray together, there's this bonding that's coming here. I think it's like the one-sided aspect of that, and you're showing yourself vulnerable, and so she's loving that because she's relational. So she's coming under that part of you, and then I think that's what that's doing to us is it's sort of opening up a part of us as well. That it can be easier to be a little more vulnerable where we're writing instead of in her presence, like in the action, right? That can be a little bit more difficult to be vulnerable to share, our feelings or what she's spurring on in us. So I think it's doing some good stuff in us that's really laying some good groundwork and foundational binding our marriage together. It's covenantal, right? I mean, this is God wrote the Bible to us, his word. In fact, God actually was the word that came and dwelt among us. So there's something about the written word. It's the contract component of the covenant, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
really locking us into our word. So I think it's just powerful. And it's just going to be good. Probably going to get a little different smile from her, hopefully.
For sure. And it's interesting, in Genesis, when God performed the first wedding, he said, basically leave, cleave, and weave. A man will leave his father and mother,
Mm-hmm.
cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, or weave. This love letter is part of that cleaving, which is
Mm.
connecting. You're
Yeah.
cleaving to your wife here. You're connecting your spirit to hers by
Yeah.
being vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? And seeing
Yes.
and
Yeah.
seeing the vulnerability that she's expressed to you and putting that on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
good,
and
man.
and literally, like Jesus came and dwelt among us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he became life in our midst. And when God spoke the world into existence, it was spoken, right? Like so, we are speaking life into our wife. We are literally, um, yeah, we're creating the life. We're creating that bond. We're creating like the next, like across a mud puddle. It's like we're literally like it's almost like laying our coat down for her next step,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as we keep doing these things, all the different things of a healthy marriage, I think just really lays the groundwork for that. And this is just one more component that we can be doing that doesn't get used enough, I don't think. I'm guilty of that as well. But it's the
Yeah.
written word. It's like, man, I can take it to the bank, right?
And you
Not
said
literally.
something that was really good. You said she needs that. She does need that. How
Yeah.
many of our women are not being told that they're beautiful, that they're loved
Hmm.
by their husband?
Yeah.
I mean, how they need to hear that, but
Hmm.
but when you write it down, it never goes away.
Yeah.
Like the words go away and they fade over time,
Yeah.
but the written word does not. It exists forever,
Yeah.
and it actually exists to the next generation.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
and in
really
the
good.
same token, when we get something from our wives, right? Like with that first time, and you're going to your, look at this. She's gonna be good. She said she loved me. Yes, she wants to date me or whatever, right? Like we're so excited. It's locked, right? It locks it in. It's our proof. Our wives, when they go out in the future, right? Like after they've read that, then they're going to, I mean, they know that in the back of their mind. They have a tough time. They can think back to that letter. That gives them strength. That gives them encouragement, right? And then that is going to the future generation because that's changing the way that they're passing on the life going forward. Like my husband sees me this way. And so then I'm going to step up and make sure that I am being this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're passing that on to our kids, and then they're carrying themselves that way. So she does the same. Amy does the same thing to me, man. When she says, I'm the toughest guy she knows, and I'm like, I know I'm not, but man, I feel like it. So I start acting a lot tougher.
Yes. Well, it's really funny, Kevin, because it does go both ways. Like in my library, every Christmas card, any card that anybody sends me with a personal note that I feel like is affirming or encouraging, I save it and I put it in one of my books behind me. So my library is not only filled with books, but it's filled with hundreds of cards of people who have said things that are meaningful to me. And these things, this written word, it doesn't go away, right? Because at the end of the day, my wife, the question women ask is, am I still beautiful enough for you to pursue? And the love letter says, I'm doing it right now, baby. And then the men, what we want to know from our wives is we still got what it takes. Yeah. And so when your wife says, I'm the strongest man go, you say, yes, I am. I mean, you know what I mean? You're like, I better become the man that my dog thinks I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly,
and step up to the man my wife is telling me I am. So now this is great. What a great conversation. Well, Kevin, thank you so much, man, for this. Hey, man, I appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I look forward to thousands of men having better marriages because they've learned how to write a love letter today.
Yep. Thanks.
God bless you, brother.
All right. We'll see you, Jim.
That was so good. What a unique podcast. Who would have thought? Hey guys, make sure that if you are not a subscriber to this podcast, that you do so. Man, help us out with that. And then also shoot our link on over to some of your buddies and get them involved in our show as well. You guys can collaborate on favorite episodes and things that really help you to be a better man. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. And be a man.